Yeah, welcome to the No State Project. It is live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona for January 21, 2017, right here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, where we are live every Saturday from 4 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, 1 to 4 Pacific, and from 9 to noon if you're down under in Australia. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Great to be back live. I was out of town, so I missed actually 2 broadcasts last week and Wednesday. So I stayed an extra day in California, and so I drove back on Wednesday afternoon. So that's why we didn't have episode 9, but this Wednesday we will be back live. And oh, wow, we got a lot of stuff to get to. You know, when you've been out of town for a few weeks, a lot of things happen. We miss a show. We always have a ton of material for every show, but more so, of course, when we miss a live broadcast. So, couple things. You know, I've been doing this a while, and when you take a position that goes so far against the grain of even liberty activists, where my position is there is no such thing as a citizen, never was. There is no such thing then as states, and there are no such things as citizens, and that there's not a shred of evidence that their rules apply. Some people think that I am so god-awful stupid that I don't understand that there's a prison system. That somehow when I get on the radio or I'm doing private consults and I'm helping people, which if you go to markstevens.net, there is a lot of evidence of being successful on 3 damn continents. Hell, we've even had a tax matter thrown out in Germany, for heaven's sakes, because it's all based on the same thing. But for some reason, people who don't like this seem to have to throw in this criticism that not only am I an idiot, but for some reason, I'm completely ignorant that there is a prison system. And I maybe it's just the fact that the people who don't like the work that I do and don't like the virtual mountain of evidence showing how effective using just the Socratic method asking questions from an anarchist perspective where we're not accepting these sacred cows that there are governments and citizens. And yes, we do know there's a prison system. We know that when you go into a group of killers, thieves, and liars, that you stand a chance of being a part of the prison system. Because the show is about bringing about a voluntary society because we understand as well as anybody that they are just men and women forcing us to pay them and that you can go to prison. We want to see them out of business. The level, this is one of the things, why did I do a Facebook in the first place? What, so I can have people post about this damn hero worship, about the coronation that took place yesterday? I don't care. And if anyone thought that Trump was going to do better than Hillary or Bernie, you're wrong. History is against you. My gosh. Yeah, the major policies are going to shift. Oh, the savior. We've elected a savior. No, the same policies will continue. Brown people will still be bombed on, 8,000 miles away. That's not going to change. It's probably going to be stepped up a bit. So, no. Well, I understand perfectly well that there is a prison system and that there is a risk in going to court. Absolutely. I've been there. I've done it. And I don't recommend that people do something they're not ready for. And I certainly wouldn't recommend that people go into court and do something that I have not done and thousands of other people that I've taught have not already done and been successful at. What I don't like is these criticisms that if you're going to criticize my work, please at least get your criticism right. Criticism is something I'm actually saying. So somebody, and I'm going to do a whole separate video about this. Somebody, and I don't know who it was, he go on the international skeptics.com forum. And if there's a takeaway from the show today, let it be If someone tells you they're a skeptic, be really skeptical, because they're probably not. Because in my experience, and yes, I've had personal contact with the guru of the skeptics, the Michael Shermer, who is only a skeptic for things that he has already determined he doesn't like or doesn't think is real. If he has a firm belief in something, he's not skeptical about it, regardless of whether he's done evidence. He's done an investigation to the evidence and the rationale behind the concept. I know that from personal, firsthand experience. I got a cool story bro from him, basically, at Libertopia back, the first one. He's not an anarchist. He's not a voluntarist. He's not an anarcho-capitalist. He's a statist. And he's not interested in things like a stateless society. He's not interested in things of freedom. So it seems to me that most people who proclaim to be skeptics are just people who are just wanting to piss on people who are religious and make fun of religious people. Because when it really comes down to it, and I've mentioned this on the show today, the skeptics I've had contact with and the skeptics who have criticized my work are just as zealous in their religious belief, or in their beliefs. They're just as religiously zealous in their beliefs as any religious zealot is with theirs. So somebody here on the forum will get that linked up. But I'll do a separate video of this because there's a lot here, and I don't want to spend that much time on it. But I think it's valuable to go through to see through what I think is just arrogance. The idea that someone who and let's look at, before we get into this, let's look at skepticism, what it is. It's generally any questioning, and this is from Wikipedia, it's generally any questioning attitude or doubt towards one or more items of putative knowledge or belief. It is often directed at domains such as morality, religion, or the nature of knowledge. Formally, skepticism as a topic occurs in the context of philosophy, particularly epistemology, although it can be applied to any topic such as politics, religion, and pseudoscience. Philosophical skepticism is a systematic philosophy that questions the notion that absolutely certain knowledge is possible. Classical philosophical skepticism derives from the classical Greek verb skeptomai, or to search, implying searching but not finding. Okay? Absolute certainty, not a part of skepticism. Adherence to, I can't pronounce it. It's, I know I'm of Greek descent, but I can't do it. Suspend judgment in investigation. Skeptics may even doubt the reliability of their own senses. Okay, so skepticism, basically, doubt a proposition until the logic and evidence is there to support it. And that is something that is sorely missing with skeptics that I've come in contact with, and atheists when it comes to the concept of government, the concept of states and nations and citizens, something that is absolutely and demonstrably false. There is no state. There is none. There is no government. They're just men and women forcing us to pay them. But the manner in which they hold tight to those concepts is relying on something that's demonstrably false and pissing on anybody who dares to counter that. How is that any different than the religious zealot? How is that any different? It's the same process. Different gods. That's all. Atheists are fond of saying to a Christian or a Muslim, I, like you, we both have a common thing where we reject thousands and thousands of gods. I just reject one more. And I say, if you believe that there is a government and states, then you are accepting at least one more. You're accepting something that is demonstrably false, and you persist in that, and you piss on anybody like myself who has a website and puts this out. So I'll go through this when I get back, but we will be taking calls today. 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, and it's Frank Rizzle 3 on Skype. So we'll be back with the skeptic crap in just a moment. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. Let's get right back into this. We're live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. The website, of course, markstevens.net, where you can get the article that I posted regarding debunking territorial/personal jurisdiction, why it doesn't exist. And I had used, and in the video I point out why I used the picture that I did with Annie Bernard, Ed Helms from The Office. I used that because I noticed when I was going and doing the article that I had gotten several citations from Cornell. So, it's not a big secret why I did that. So anybody who would watch The Office would get the reference, oh, he just referenced Cornell like 5 times. Okay, now I understand why he used that. But, of course, these skeptics, so-called skeptics, didn't get that. That was just a point of making fun of me. Instead of actually addressing the arguments that I raised. So somebody, JCM, posted the video or the article on here and posted in some of the first couple lines of text, and so this is just ridiculous. This is funny but tragic too. They make a great deal of logic and analysis, but one wonders if the law doesn't apply because of jurisdictional issues, then how is it that someone can appeal to the law for remedy? It is the bind of solipsism, with jail serving as the rock kicked in. Thus do I refute it. This just smacks of I'm so smart that instead of trying to show an error in the logic somewhere, I'm just going to make a snarky remark. Just the fact that someone can appeal to the law for remedy because there's nothing else available, let's say like for a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, how the hell is that evidence that the laws apply in the first place? How does that defeat the argument? How does that prove a written instrument from 1787 applies to anybody? Oh, but the skeptic, he certainly refuted me. Okay. Why is this in education? Is there a GoFundMe to send Stevens back to school? Is this subform also meant to include anti-education? Okay. Hell of a way to dispute the facts, show where my facts were in error, and to show where my logical analysis is in error. That doesn't... Okay. Marc Stevens is a small fish in the tiny pond of tax protesters / detaxers. He has some odd ideas about jurisdiction. And then what the guy did as a moderator is, given the Freeman, sovereign citizen, tax protester elements of Marc Stevens' beliefs, this thread really belongs in conspiracy theory, which is where I will move it even without Mr. Stevens' consent. Well, I'm not on your forum, so I don't care, but what part of anarchy do you not understand about voluntarism and getting to a stateless society? It's the fact that no analysis is done whatsoever of the work that I've done, let alone the fact that I have debunked the sovereign citizen Freeman stuff for the better part of 10 years of doing the show on and off. No clue as to what I'm at. If you're going to criticize me, at least get it right. It reminds me of Monsters Incorporated. Listen here, you one-eyed cretin. Hey, if you're going to insult me, at least get it right. It's cretin. So someone posted, this is a brilliant one. His arguments are poor, bearing almost zero relation to actual legal practice and theory. Okay, it's a nice generalization. Where's the analysis? Someone actually tries to do it and gets it right. He lays out 5 assertions that are fairly accurate. They're not completely accurate, but he says, I think that's it. Where it runs into the weeds is where it always goes with these people. I'm not a sovereign citizen or a freeman. Get it right. They drill down even deeper into legal nuances and only accept definitions which fit their idea. Again, where have I ever done that? That's a sovereign citizen freeman thing. Get it right. Oh, but why do an investigation? You're a skeptic. That means you just piss on any idea you don't like. Really? I thought it had to do with evidence and logic. They ignore the experimental evidence, case law, and tradition. Are we really having a so-called skeptic making an appeal to tradition? Really? Yes, I will reject an appeal to tradition wholesale because that's not proof. That's a logical fallacy. So, yeah, but case law presupposes the argument has already been proven true. That would be circular logic. So yes, I will reject logical fallacies wholesale, as a skeptic is supposed to, but I guess not. We are touching on their God. Their God. Instead, they treat the courts like some Dungeons and Dragons rule book dispute, forgetting the judge is the dungeon master. You're not talking about me. I apply the rules, and I just want them to enforce the rules that they have. What we're doing is bringing out the contradiction that they will not follow their rules. We try to plead guilty if the prosecution has met their burden of proof to that point, which is just prima facie, which they cannot. That's black letter law. The fact that they can't produce the evidence is not some archaic thing of mine. And then you have the brilliance here. Proving the jurisdiction of the court, at least in Canada, is ludicrously simple. A, Superior Court or Queen's Court of Superior Court or Court of Queen's Bench has authority to hear cases for offenses that are alleged to have occurred within the territorial confines of Canada and a limited number of extraterritorial offenses. And B, part of the information of a criminal offense includes the location of the crime and where the accused was arrested. If B is within A, then Canadian court has jurisdiction. That's assuming that the Constitution applies because you're physically in Canada, which even a law professor in Canada explained is based on neither evidence nor logic or argument. It's a blunt assertion of power. Just because they say it applies doesn't mean it does. But hold that thought for a moment. Here we go. The coup de grace here. This is on a skeptic website, by the way. This is someone who's a so-called skeptic. This is beautiful. I'm going to include this in a video because but that's where most people are seeing and hearing the show anyway. When we post it to YouTube. He takes a quote from someone who got this accurate as my position, which I think is a skeptic's position, any rational person. 4, asserting something to be true, in this case jurisdiction, is not evidence in the legal sense. Now, that it should be in any sense. Just asserting something is true doesn't make it so. It's called a proof by assertion fallacy. And then it's vox et praetera nihil, or, the Latin for its voice and nothing more. This guy actually comes out and says that my claim asserting something to be true doesn't make it true. He says, this, I think, is the Achilles heel of the argument, because the fundamental attribute of legislation is that a law is what it is stated to be. It's not necessary, therefore, to defend the assertion that the written law is the actual law, because there is no distinction between the two. It's only necessary to provide evidence that the situation is covered by the written word of the law within the range of interpretations placed upon it by precedent. I know you're going to have to see this to really get a grasp of how unbelievably stupid that comment was and how illogical and unskeptical it really is. But I'll finish that in the next segment when we get back, and I promise I'll finish that quickly and then get to your calls right here on the No State Project. 218-632-9399 if you want to join me. We'll be right back. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted and the website markstevens.net. If you have an actual criticism about my work, I have no problem. We have 4 hours of broadcast, 3 here on LRN.FM every Saturday, and an hour commercial free on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Eastern Time. I have no problem addressing criticisms, but please at least get my position right. This, and I put it in the Skype chat so you guys can see where this trash is coming from. I have to read this again for people just tuning in, because it is such a steaming pile of garbage, and a nice straw man attempt there also. It's hard to believe that this is coming from a self-proclaimed skeptic who is not supposed to believe in certainty and certainly won't be persuaded without evidence and a logical, rational basis for a proposition. But he comes out with this, that the Achilles heel of my argument is that I'm claiming that something that is just asserted is not true just because it's asserted. Okay? I thought that was like the skeptic's creed. Just because you say it's true doesn't mean it is true. I know James Randi isn't dead yet, but if he was, he'd be spinning in his grave at something like that. What the hell's wrong? What are you talking about? He says the fundamental attribute of legislation is that a law is what it is stated to be. Who the hell argued anything other than that? Now, I never said a law isn't what it says it is. I'm arguing there's no evidence that rules written by men and women in Washington, D.C. or Canberra or Quebec where it applies to everyone just because they say so. Attack the argument. Show where the argument is wrong. My gosh, you can copy and paste. I know you can. It's right there in your own forum. Why didn't you actually copy and paste one of my arguments from the article? Therefore, it is not necessary, therefore, to defend the assertion that the written law is the actual law. You straw man much? I didn't say that because there is no distinction between the two. It's only necessary to provide evidence that the situation is covered. And now we have our circular logic. It's only necessary to provide evidence that the situation is covered by the written word of the law within the range of interpretations placed upon it by precedent. So, interpretation is what is now evidence to a skeptic. Evidence. That's rational. So this is just, I will do a video on this because this absolutely needs to be preserved where a lot more people are going to hear about it because the numbers don't lie. Most of the people who do hear the show are not listening, are listening from the YouTube. I expect this kind of garbage from YouTube comments, and I think what I'm going to do is from now on, with all the videos I do, I'm probably going to disable the comments, and then I'll have a link to where the video is embedded into its own thread on the forum, and so people can comment there. But this is just, and I'm not going to get into it right now. I want to get to the calls. I do want to say that while I have been falsely accused of things on LRN.FM and Free Talk Live, and I have addressed that live, it recently came to my attention, and I have some audio that maybe I'll play later that I think it was last week, or maybe a little longer ago, but some things were said about me on Free Talk Live, and apparently it's not the first time that someone has, who's one of the regular hosts of Free Talk Live, has gotten my position wrong. Again, make your criticism about me, fine, but good Lord, man, do your homework. Get my position right, and then show where it's wrong. Don't just pull something out of your ass and just start talking on a nationally syndicated radio show like Free Talk Live and telling people that this is my position. So, again, I have no problem with criticism, but look, my God, as I'll play in the clip later, get my actual argument or position correct. Don't go on a nationally syndicated program and get my position wrong. At least extend me that courtesy. Criticize me all you want. Just do it while getting my position correct. Think that, I didn't get onto the caller line. I was supposed to. Wait, I did. Let me, hold on. That's the thing. I do a little radio show, and I'm glad for all the people that we do contact and are able to help. And we have evidence all the time on markstevens.net that we are helping people. We are helping, that people are learning to defend themselves. But it makes it more difficult when someone on a nationally syndicated radio show is saying things that are not true about me and scaring people off. That people who would defend themselves against the beast won't because they're listening to Free Talk Live and hearing something that's just patently false, things that I have never said. But we'll get to, so we have we have all new callers today, which is great. We have area code 580. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mark, this is Chris from Lawton, Oklahoma.
Chris from Oklahoma.
Lawtown.
What do you got for us today, Chris?
Yeah, we spoke before. We spoke a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember, but I did a call with you for my podcast back in January of 2014.
Oh.
But
I'm sorry.
it was a real good conversation. Yeah, it's been a while, but I was listening to what you're saying about the so-called skeptics, and yeah, you run into this all. I mean, I have had in the past a lot of discussions with so-called skeptics over. I reject evolution theory, so I try to get them to, okay, so where's your evidence for all this? And it's the same thing. You get the same kind of fallacious arguments thrown at you consistently. I don't know what your position is on that, but I mean, from my direct experience, that's what you end up getting. Those types of arguments to defend, like any kind of position that is laying claim to something that's allegedly scientific, because the assumption is always there that what you're being presented with is a product of the direct of a correct application of the so-called scientific method. But that's always, I mean, I just point out to them, well, that's an assumption that you need to provide evidence for. And
well, is it an assumption or is it an inference based on the best available evidence? There is a difference.
Now, what would be the best available evidence?
Well, I don't want to get into a discussion about the building blocks of evolution and the evidence that supports it. I'm just talking about as far as the process of engaging people.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about too. I don't want to get into whether evolution is true or not, but I mean, the evidence that's presented, there's a lot of direct parallels to what the methodology, how you're approaching the law. It's really a lot of similarities.
Well, there may be some similarities, but I'll say the biggest difference is what I'm doing. I'm talking about certain concepts of government and states and citizens that are demonstrably false. You can, so the difference is you can't show evidence to disprove evolution. You can show evidence that suggests evolution, sure, but I've never seen where somebody has presented evidence showing it is not, and then to show that the person who believes in evolution is persisting in a belief that's demonstrably false. So that's the major difference here. We're talking about people who piss all over people that may be religious or whatever the situation may be, because and as delusional, and yet just like these people that, like Sam Harris, who will persist in a belief despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. And to me, it's arrogant and it's hypocritical, and it goes against this notion that they're actually skeptics and scientific. We're up against the break, so just hold on, Chris. We'll be back in just a moment here on the No State Project, taking your calls and more. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I just can't start speaking over that, at least before the bass solo on that. And for those listening to the live broadcast, that, of course, was Rush, La Via Strangiato, one of the greatest instrumentals ever recorded, and they just keep playing it better. Guitar player I jam with, I actually got to see them in Vegas a couple years ago. They was the Time Machine. I think it was that tour, and I have to watch it on YouTube, but still awesome. But welcome back, everybody, to the No State Project, where we always welcome dissent and criticism, but please, you don't have to insult us by getting the position wrong. Criticize all you want, but address the actual argument or evidence, whatever it is we're actually I'm actually putting out there. Then there's no problem. Get it right. Get it right. Welcome back. But we're talking with Chris in Oklahoma and discussing the similarities. Some of the similarities, I guess, when discussing certain things with atheists or other, or not just atheists, but people who. Well, why don't you, fill this back in there, Chris? Talking with someone who believes in evolution or believes that the evidence points to evolution, and that you are skeptical and don't see that the evidence that they're putting forth and the arguments that they're putting forth are persuasive.
Well, right, yeah, I was. What I was getting at is that just like the quote you just read, it's so you were, Mark, presented with evidence, right? But it's fallacious. It's not it's just sophistry. It's not based on any really sound logic. But you were presented with evidence, and then you have to. It's like in the same way, like with evolution theory. Someone's going to present to you, hey, we found this bone in the ground. We call it Tiktaalik, and it's evidence that it's a transitional form. Well, it's all predicated on the belief in the authority of the source, right? Like because if I dig up Tiktaalik and I look at it, that's not proof of anything to me. What would be prima facie, like it on its face. Okay, now I'm an instantaneous believer in evolution theory. No, you have to accept the authority of the established order that tells you that is evidence. It's just like your argument not your argument, but the argument you were presented with from that individual. It's along the same lines. It's like, oh well, here's our evidence, but that all presupposes the authority of the of their cult.
I wouldn't call it a cult. Let me make an analogy here and see if I, can the way I see it. Somebody says to me, "You say there's no state. Prove it." I say, "All right. Well, we know that what we call government is just men and women forcing us to pay them. We can all agree on that. So we have agreement. We start with being a citizen." Having a state, you have to have citizens in the body politic. And it's because a citizen is a member of the body politic, owing a duty of allegiance in return for duty of protection. These are reciprocal obligations, one in consideration for the other. Now, because they are just forcing us to pay them, no reciprocal obligations are created. Therefore, there are no citizens, there is no body politic, there is no state. And because you need to have a state, to have a government, we're back to square one, just men and women forcing us to pay them. That's my evidence and my logical basis for my assertion. And so somebody would have to punch a hole in the logic or show where my facts were wrong to defeat that. And so far, no one has been able to do that because it's absolutely sound. Now, I think that when it comes to evolution, it's not just showing one particular thing. This proves that. They're saying, okay, we're showing incremental changes over a long period of time, and which increases
that you can't observe. You concur with that, right? You cannot observe incremental changes over vast aeons of time.
I don't know if that's accurate. I think with bacteria, they have been able to recently see that.
Oh, you're talking about the what is it? The E. coli citrate trait that was observed with the Linsky experiments. Yeah. See, well, that's evidence too, right? So then you have to accept the interpretation, the evolutionary interpretation of that observation, because that's all that science is going to give you is observation. It's going to give you a definition of the observation, or here's the experiments they did, and here's what we observed. But then you have to also accept the interpretation. But then, you can, in the same way that you can examine the evidence that's presented to you that the law exists, it's like, well, how, you have to question, and you have to take each individual claim, right, upon a case-by-case basis, in the case of evolution, and say, well, is this a valid claim or is it not? But in that case, it's, if what they're telling you is that, and so that it, gene expression, and all that, well, based on what they tell you, how it works and everything, they're I guess, to make a long story short, they're just superimposing an evolutionary interpretation on it where it's not warranted. But see, then you can say when you knock that one down, you'll have to confront every single one. But instead of confronting every single one of those claims that prove evolution, I go to the same way that you're doing with your method, is like, okay, what's the underlying premise of this? Are you telling me that because something is in a peer-reviewed paper or something like that, that's evidence? That's the same thing as empiricism for me. No, you can't confer empiricism to somebody. You can have them, view the evidence directly, but it's all based on assumptions.
Well,
You
I
know,
don't
it's
know.
all
No,
based
I
on
don't
a
think
series,
that's
a set
correct.
of assumptions, and it's really kind of works its way back to the same unquestioned, unfounded premise that it's coming from a quote unquote authoritative source, and that this, you know, Western scientific establishment has nothing but the pure pursuit of knowledge and truth, and it's uncorrupted by any kind of, predisposed biases or anything like that. But that's all assumptions. That's all just assumptions that never get established with evidence. It's all
I
just
don't think that that's
assumed
accurate.
going into it.
I don't think that that's accurate, that there's no evidence and it's all assumptions, because it's a theory scientifically, because the hypothesis has been tested and tested and tested and tested and tested. The theory in the scientific world is not the same thing as a legal theory. What they're saying is, and at least scientists that I think are getting it right, is that we're not absolutely certain about this because science doesn't have absolute certainty. They're saying this is the best explanation with the least amount of assumptions based on the data that we have collected for X number of years.
That is their claim. Yes. Yeah. But then you have to accept that what their motive is as a collective or as an organization is somehow immune from being subject to, you know, pseudoscience or pseudoscientific beliefs, or that they're shoehorning observations into fit a predetermined conclusion. In the same way, like say Mormons, if they go out and there is a loosely based body of Mormon science where they go out and they do, you know, excavations, archaeology to substantiate the claim that, you know, they're the Israelites that came over here and all that. I mean, those are all scientific claims, but it's still science. I mean, you can't. Now you can reject it and say, well, it's a religiously biased motive that clearly the Mormons have, but then somehow, like, the Western scientific establishment is totally immune from that. And see, that's where that's where I want to have evidence that that's not the case. But I believe that's clearly the case based on observation, because you're always going to get presented with sophistry when they're trying to, you know, establish their claims, and it's all based on appeals to authority. You know, peer review is an appeal to an authority. It's appeal to authority, consensus, and authority. So it's kind of a double whammy of logical fallacies encapsulated into one term or one word, or two words, peer review. But it's very similar. I mean, it's all sophistry that it's predicated on. But
you know, that's what kind of gets me, because the fact that governments are so adamant about climate control and climate change. I mean, I tend to look at the scientific evidence and believe that, yes, they can determine that there's 3 times the amount of carbon, that the methane is out of control, you've got dead spots, the pollution is bad. And the fact that politicians are pushing it, my own bias against them, makes it difficult to follow it. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a moment. But just real quick to finish the thought off air. I have to put my biases aside and look at the data that's available. Can I sit there and say that all the data is being faked for some political agenda? No, there are independent sources that can show that there are dead spots that are caused by the agriculture industry. There's no question that there are dead spots. There's video evidence that that fish dying by the millions. Mm-hmm. Things are in bad shape, and it just how could I possibly have a belief that is shared by politicians? And that's the thing. But even a broken clock is right one. So their motives, they don't. What is it? We're not going to let any tragedy go to waste. So even if something happens organically, they can use that as a basis to increase their own power. It doesn't mean that the underlying issue is not real. So this idea, like the latest king says that global warming is a Chinese. Why am I doing that voice? But global warming being a Chinese hoax to destroy American capitalism. I can't buy that for a second. But anyway, we have to take a short break. We'll finish in the next segment. And I wanted to ask you, what's the link for your podcast?
It's hoaxbusterscall.com. That'll direct to my blog. And then it
Hoaxbusters
call.com. It's all one, all together, one word.
Cool. All right, we've got about 4 minutes. So I'll be right back. Oh, welcome back to the No State Project. I thought I had another minute. I'm glad to be with you back here. It is the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio. Wait. Those on the podcast will get a kick out of that. I did not miss my cue. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm on cue this time. Second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio, and we've got a lot of calls to still get to. So, but this is by anarchy, of course, we mean a rejection of the concept of having rulers, having a violent ruling class. And I've really, unless you're personally invested in it, I don't see where one would actually advocate for a violent ruling class. And if they did, I love to hear the argument. I'm sure it would involve the roads, though. I'm pretty certain it would involve the roads. But it's January 21st. We're live, of course, from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona, where dissent is welcome, but please do your homework and at least get my position correct. So it just seems to be the kind of thing today, these days, so-called libertarians and the fear-mongering, making mountains out of molehills, and oh my gosh, if you let immigrants in, the world will collapse and white culture will be destroyed. Oh, please, give me a break. Where did this drill start getting so popular? Anyway, that's for another show, another time, every time when I actually care. When I get back to my caller, Chris in Oklahoma. Okay. So let's finish this. So we're talking about, we were talking before the break, my problem, my own personal bias, because I tend to believe that the science and the data is correct, that there is some serious problem with pollution, including with carbon and methane and what it's doing, and how you can scientifically show that there is a hell of a lot more carbon in the atmosphere now than from the last ice age. I just have a major problem having any agreement with a politician. It just makes my skin crawl. But you have to set your personal bias aside and look at the data. So I really don't believe that it's a Chinese conspiracy to destroy American capitalism. Because why would you want to destroy your one of your biggest markets? It doesn't. Anyway.
Yeah, can I just say one thing about that? And I know you got other callers holding, so I wanted to go into veganism too, but I'll just save that for another time.
Oh no, we can do that too.
Again.
We got enough. We should be able to fill the segment with that.
All right, great. The carbon thing is that plants breathe carbon. I think that's an established fact of science.
Sure.
And by the way, I don't reject scientific method at all, but. Here's one direct observation. You can go and look at these devices that people put in greenhouses to pump carbon dioxide into the greenhouse, and the plants thrive on carbon dioxide. So what they'll tell you what they ignore in the whole carbon dioxide debate is the carbon cycle. Like things like there is all this carbon dioxide that gets put out naturally into the environment. And it goes through the carbon cycle, like the oceans absorb it, a great deal of it, and then the plants do. But the plants take carbon and turn it into plant material. They take it out of the atmosphere and turn it into plant material. And the parts per million of carbon that people will pump into their greenhouses, like way higher than any concentration that we could ever hope to achieve by just going, full bore operations on industrialism or whatever. We can never approach those levels of concentration. But see, it gets absorbed into the plant. So they have to explain to me how it doesn't work like that in the atmosphere. I don't know why it wouldn't in the open atmosphere, as opposed to a greenhouse. So if you're pumping all this people know this, and you can go and look at the direct evidence that people are doing this, and there's this whole industry around these carbon pumps to pump carbon into greenhouses, artificial greenhouses. Then I don't see how in the world it's not being absorbed by the available carbon in the atmosphere is being absorbed by the plant material that's all around the world.
From what I understand, it's
just
overwhelming, and it's not able to be naturally absorbed by the plants. You also have the fact that methane is it's a magnitude higher in how it absorbs heat. It's like
but how could it be overwhelming if it's not even close to the concentrations that get artificially induced in greenhouses? I mean, and that's something you can directly observe. You don't have to take a climate scientist's word for it. And when they say there's a majority of scientists that believe in this, like, where's the evidence for that claim?
Well, I don't care about the consensus. I'm trying to go quickly here. I don't care about the consensus. I just care about, is the data reliable, that's being given. And, the fact is, I'm tending to follow the data, and I don't care about the consensus. And you can,
Right.
I wish I had more time, but and I was better prepared for something like this, so I could have this stuff in front of me. But the methane is not only, but the methane is causing dead spots in oceans, lakes, and rivers, and non-political bodies are telling us that there's not going to be any fish, in 20 years. It's going to be from overfishing and pollution. But let's. I think the underlying issue here is, yes, we have to look at the data, especially when it's data that we can count on. So when it comes to something like what we talk about here on the show, there is absolutely no rational discussion in whether they are just men and women forcing us to pay them. There is no rational discussion on that. That's what is happening. And in these other things that they're talking about, whatever theories, whatever legal principles they put forward, always get defeated by those simple facts. So you wanted to mention something about veganism?
Oh, well, yeah, I don't agree with your position on veganism. I think that it's there's a logical disconnect on that. I mean, I went into it on my podcast last time I did a podcast last Monday evening. I don't know, like, if you want to go into it now, or if you want to maybe save it for another call or something, because maybe listen to what my position on it is, before going into a conversation on it. Or I was kind of worked up, and I hope you don't take it to mean I was like bashing you or anything like that, but it might come across that way at times or something. But no, I was just kind of getting. I just think that it's not a I was going to use the word sustainable, but I hate that word. It's so overused. But as a position, it can't. I don't think it can be maintained consistently, logically, at all.
To not eat animals?
Well, to take the position that I guess, and not see, I don't want to misrepresent what your position is, but I got the impression that you were saying that human beings and that any other life form on the planet there is no like hierarchies in nature, I guess, and there's no differentiation between like a human being and a cow, as far as there's this is straight across the board moral equivalency on the value of a coyote or a human being. I don't know if that is the position.
The position is, the ethical position is, it's that unnecessary harm and death is unethical. And so when we go, do you agree with that? That unnecessary suffering, harm, and death is immoral and wrong?
Unnecessary. Well, yeah, I mean, just killing and torturing an animal just for the sake of killing and torturing, that's absolutely wrong. Yeah.
Okay. So,
but then, like, you have a word in there, necessary, and then that's sort of that's a word that's it's going to be predicated on a certain interpretation. What do you mean by necessary?
Yes.
You have to qualify that.
Now, let's break it down before we're out of time, or we'll have to finish off air, but eventually. can you meet all your nutrition needs by just eating plant sources? Okay. The science is, the data is clear that we can. We have many contemporary examples. I'm one of them. So if you can meet all your nutritional needs by just eating plants, is it necessary to then eat animals?
But plants are, I mean, so you've set a boundary between certain classifications of living things. So you're putting the green light on greens, no pun intended, but then animals are off limits.
Well, it's not arbitrary.
And I kind of went into that too. I don't see how it's sort of an arbitrary distinction.
No, it has to do with. That's why the base ethical question or principle is that the unnecessary suffering, harm, and death is wrong. Now, can a plant suffer? No, it doesn't have a nervous system. So the argument that plants are intelligent falls. It doesn't. They can respond to stimuli. It doesn't make them sentient. It doesn't mean that they can suffer. It doesn't, because to suffer is subjective. You have to have a nervous system. You have to have something. So again, and we could talk about what if just the question being, if you can meet all your nutritional needs with just plants, is it necessary to then eat animals?
If you can meet all your nutritional needs with plants, and then
we got to be quick because I'm still.
Is it necessary to eat animals? Well, I mean, you have. I mean, you talked about this on the last show you did about. Yeah, it requires just the harvesting of crops requires a certain amount of death. I mean, it's not intentional, it's not purposeful, but it's the harvesting with the methods used now, it's like a lot of animals get killed in the process.
That's why. But the question is, if you can meet all your nutritional needs through just plants, and that includes nuts and seeds and fruits, vegetables, right? Is it necessary then to eat animals?
I don't know if that's the case. I mean, it could.
But let's just take the hypothetical. I got to go quick with you.
Then is it practical?
No. Wait. Is it necessary? I got to be quick, so I apologize for jumping in. Let's just tackle the ethical question first, and then we'll move into the practical. If it's not necessary, or if you can meet all of your nutritional needs by just eating plants, is it necessary to then kill and eat animals?
Is it necessary? No, it's not necessary.
No. Okay. No. So now the question turns on. Now, so you would agree that if it's not necessary to get all your nutrition from animals, and that you would agree that if it's not necessary, then killing and eating animals is wrong and unethical.
So killing and eating animals is unjustified because of some necessity or lack of necessity, but then that doesn't address the basic point of like what is using animals even for clothing or something like that to keep yourself warm. I don't.
Again, is it necessary? Because there are synthetic and plant-based materials that you can use, so it's absolutely not necessary. So, but I'm trying to, before I can get to the practical, I just need an agreement that far you agree it because it's unnecessary to kill and eat animals, it is immoral and or unethical.
No, I don't think it's immoral to use animals for food and all that. No, I don't think it's immoral, whether it's necessary or not. Okay, as far as nutrition goes.
But
I think there's.
You've already stated that if you can get all your nutrition through plants, it's not necessary to then kill and eat animals. So the ethical question is, if it's not necessary to kill and eat animals because you can get all your nutrition from plants, isn't it then immoral or unethical to kill them anyway? You're talking about
based
unnecessary.
On what, I mean, it's immoral to kill an animal based on what?
It's immoral to kill an animal when it's not necessary to sustain your life. Is what I'm getting at. And we've already established you believe it's unethical to kill unnecessarily. I'm just trying to now, before we get to the practical, have you be consistent with your prior two statements. We're up against the break anyway. I gotta let you go because we've got a boatload of calls here. But I do appreciate the Chris. I wanted to give you a website. It's hoaxbusterscall.com.
That's correct. Yeah, thanks, man, for plugging that. Yeah, I'll try again some future time. We could continue this.
Sounds good.
That's
Appreciate
cool.
the call.
All right, great.
Thanks, Chris. Chris with Hoaxbusters.
Take care.
Hoaxbusterscall.com. Appreciate that. And what we talked about off air, he does agree that unnecessary suffering and death is wrong, and that if you can get all your nutrition from plants, that it is not necessary to kill any animals. We did have a sticking point there of whether it would be then immoral to unnecessarily kill an animal, and it follows that from the first two questions to be ethically and morally consistent that yes, unnecessarily killing an animal is morally wrong and reprehensible. So that's why you see all the people hating on some movie that they put out and they were trying to force a dog into. I don't know the whole context, and people are outraged at this. I'm thinking, if it outrages you that somebody is abusing a dog, have you ever seen what they do to cows, chickens, and pigs? It's horrific, absolutely horrific. So we got a lot of calls, and I appreciate everyone's patience. I'm going to do my best to get to everybody here. We have 915. You're live on the No State Project. Which name were you calling from?
This is Gene from El Paso, Texas.
Hey, Gene. I don't know why. You must be calling on a different number, or it's the first time you called, but we've spoken before.
Yes, we have. Well, I got a summons for jury duty. Are you there?
I'm listening.
Okay. Not just any jury duty, it's federal jury duty, and it's on call for the whole month of February. So I'm just curious about how is this the best way to defend myself against this theft of my time.
Well, like I mentioned, JT should have been with us, and he's here in spirit, but he's doing productive things right now. JT, for those who aren't aware of what he did years ago, he got a similar one that you have, but it wasn't federal, it was state. And it was, you have to fill out this questionnaire or suffer consequences. It's contempt or jail or fine, whatever. And JT wrote back two very simple questions. He says, is my voluntary signature on this document required? And two, is it considered voluntary if done under threat of jail? And I think he quoted from the document. And they sent him, in response to that, like a 1-inch thick package about how it's his right and it's his obligation as a citizen, blah, 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 to do that. And he said, he wrote back, man, this is some great information. Appreciate it. Can you answer the questions, though?
Yep.
And he got notification back that he was not required to participate.
Okay. What if you've already been past the questionnaire part? You didn't challenge it at that point.
Well, this is something you have to. It sucks to be on call for a whole month. That sucks. I mean, I would say that an easy solution would be, hey, I'm an anarchist.
Right.
I'm an anarchist, and I don't see that there's any legitimacy to your organization. In fact, I think you're a group of criminals, demonstrably so. I can't see them relying on you to be a juror at that point.
Yeah, me either. Is that at voir dire?
Well, yeah, if you go in and for a voir dire, yes, you could very well say, look, I'm an anarchist. I think this is criminal. I don't like being forced here. And if you're charging somebody with violating your code, I'm going to vote my conscience, which is is to acquit. I'm telling you right now.
Okay.
Or, you don't know what the guy's charged with, but chances are, if it's federal, it's not for anything other than a code violation. It's not a mala in se or, a real crime. So if you got a code violation, you may actually be able to save someone's life.
That's what I was thinking. There was two approaches. We could go after it with activism after you're on the jury, or just refused to do it in the first place.
Yeah, I would point out though, Gene, that if you're going to do the activism on the jury, keep your mouth shut to the other jurors. And the only thing
Right.
you have to say is, I don't think they proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think the prosecutor proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's it. I don't think they made a solid case.
Okay. All right. Well, how does the citizen thing play in with this? Because I'm sure they're gonna come back with, are you a citizen, and or you got a driver's license, that's why you're obligated to be here, and all that good story stuff.
Well, depending on how you want to play that out. If you want to do it as an activist so you can save someone's life, then you can just answer the questions as, if they say, do you have a driver's license? Yep. Are you a citizen? I was born here.
Yeah.
I've had them ask me at the airport. Actually, it was McAllen, the McAllen airport, and I had one of the, someone, when I went down to help Armando, we did a seminar down there. And the guy asked me, sir, are you a U.S. citizen? And I said, well, I was born in Buffalo. And I didn't answer the question directly, but that was enough for him to make an assumption. Oh, and I did that. If you don't want to do it, you want to make a different stand, you can say, I don't see any evidence of citizenship. I just see evidence of a criminal organization.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good, man.
Yeah, hey, keep us in the loop. Let us know what happened. And if you have the opportunity to help save someone's life, someone's up on a drug charge, hey, the prosecution cannot meet their burden of proof. They can't. You know it. You listen to the show. We've spoken. And so you can be honest when you say the prosecution has not met their burden.
Okay.
Let us know.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Appreciate the call. Gene in Texas. Unfortunately, got one of them jury duties. But if you've got one and you want to handle it like JT did, hey, great. But some people, you figure at the federal level, it's not going to be, chances are it's not murder or child trafficking. It's probably taxes, something like that, code violation. Then, that's great. That is something you can actually do within the system. You can have an immediate impact. It's not the same thing as cheerleading for someone running for king. They're two different things. Like we've spoken on the show before. Yeah, if someone wants a federal office, you're not going to accomplish a damn thing other than getting the message out, and that now you have a platform to discuss these things. That's all I think you can accomplish there until they blackball you and none of the media wants to hear from you anymore. But you run for something local where you may have an immediate impact, that's different. So I would imagine it's something, and by local, I'm talking county and below, something very, very local. Then I would something I could see getting behind because you can have a big impact. We are at the end of another segment. Holy crap, we just hit the halfway mark for the big show today for January 21st, 2017. We will be back with your calls, so I appreciate everyone's patience. If you do want to join the show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, or Frank Rizzo 3. So we'll be back with that and more in just a few moments. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I am Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted, and one of the most misquoted people in the anarchist/voluntarist movement. Even on my own network, they just can't seem to get it right. Oh, man. All right. What? Oh, Joey doesn't agree with my position on veganism. Okay, we'll do the same thing with him. Maybe we'll get further than we did. And we didn't have as much time with Chris, but we'll see. We'll see. We have area code 509. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mark, this is Casey. I'm from Spokane, Washington.
All right. Well, welcome to the show.
The alleged state thereof.
Yeah. Well, what do you got for us today?
Oh, I've kind of chatted with you off and on here. I find myself presently under attack by the state. I was pulled over and charged with a DUI. The DUI was based on the fact that I failed a walking test because the last time I had an encounter with a cop, I was physically assaulted. And so I was literally scared. My knees were shaking. It was hard. It was a lot harder to walk a straight line when you're in fear of your life.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one.
So having gone through that, go ahead.
Was there any evidence? I mean, could he smell alcohol in your breath?
Oh no, it wasn't alcohol. It was marijuana, and I live in a state where I was pulled over in a residential area. If you're walking around in a residential area in Washington State, you're going to smell marijuana.
Well, kudos to our friends up in Washington then.
Right?
Yeah.
So nothing was there was no actual, like, there were no substances or paraphernalia found in the vehicle or on me or anything like that. I do partake, and so my level in my blood is way beyond what they consider arbitrary limits.
Okay.
But regardless, I caused no damage. I wasn't accused of driving recklessly. I'm not accused of harming anybody or anything like that.
Yeah,
I'm
but we have to. You got to say that if you're going to partake, that's we just passed the the 4:20 in Central Time. But if you're going to partake, it's best not to get behind the wheel of a 4,000-pound.
Oh no, I'll absolutely agree. And factually speaking, I actually hadn't smoked that day. I would have been later, but I had not up to that point. But again, that's not relevant to anything.
I misunderstood.
The case of it was I was not inebriated while I was driving in any manner.
Okay, good.
So. But regardless of that, I work at greenhouses. I handle this stuff all the time. My blood levels, like from the absorption even in my skin, my blood levels are way beyond what the state recognizes as sober level. So that, combined with the fact that I was scared to death and couldn't really walk or turn, even thinking about it, I can feel my heart rate beating up. It was an experience that I wasn't ready for, and it caught me quite off guard. So, in the end, I did I filed my paperwork immediately the next day, and they sent me back some paperwork that kind of comes back to the same paperwork they said. The judge ended up putting in a not guilty plea for me, which I filed the motion to dismiss, and he kind of, at the end of the last one, gave me this sort of conditional, like, okay, if we come back and do this again and I take away this not guilty plea, what are you going to do? So basically, he's trying to pin me down to, if I take away this not guilty plea, are you going to enter a plea of guilty? And even though those are what's going to take place, and he's going to get real upset when I don't sign that. So I've gotten a lot of paperwork. I need to send you a copy of the latest batch. Talking about the jurisdictional issue, and they maintain that the officer seeing me within the state of Washington is the grounds for them to continue forward and grounds for their personam jurisdiction.
Did you object?
I did.
And
strenuously. Unfortunately, I was overruled in this. I had a motions hearing, and I have another motions hearing coming up. He overruled it on a blanket. He just I'm denying this motion, and then when asked for grounds, he started saying that the grounds were already shown in the show of cause hearing. I objected and asked for clarifications. I asked for if it was the court's position that the prosecution had satisfied jurisdiction with evidence, and if so, where that evidence was. They pointed to the citation. I asked where or what on the citation led them to believe this. Then they went down to saying it comes down to the officer saying that he saw me there.
He said so.
When I pushed further on that, he said, it's in the show of cause, previous hearing, and that I would have to pay for the transcripts to go look at it there. When I tried to clarify again, I was threatened with sanctions.
Okay. You just reminded me of, you strenuously object. Well, that makes all the difference in the world. Your Honor, I object. Overruled. Well, but I strenuously object. Okay. Now, okay. Now I'll hear you out.
Right. Now I'll listen.
Right. I just, it's one of my favorite parts of A Few Good Men when he does that. And because
excellent movie.
Great movie. Now we have to watch it again. One day, I want to point something out. Not that this would have changed anything, but you never know. When you asked for the clarification, I know you may have said this, but not what you related to me on the show. But when they say about the ticket, the clarification should be objection. Well, are you saying evidence proving the Constitution applies to me is on the ticket?
So the only tactic that I use different is I try never to use the word Constitution. I always say the code. So evidence that the code applies to me is on the citation is the phrasing I use.
Okay.
Every time I've used the word Constitution in codes, all of a sudden it goes sideways with, we're not here to talk about constitutional matters and blah, blah, blah. Basically, I Socratic method them, and if they want to bring up the Constitution, I'll let them bring it up. Like if it ever gets down to the whole of, well, what is the authority that your codes are based on, and they bring up the Constitution, then I'll question that.
Well, the thing is, when they say something like that, you want to say objection. Isn't your territorial jurisdiction and personam jurisdiction based entirely on the Constitution?
Yeah, see, I haven't taken that approach. I have only asked for the what on the citations actually relies on it, or what evidence they're using to show the code actually applies to me. And in the end, so far, they've always defaulted down to the officer's legal claims.
Okay. Well, that's still fine. Now, in pretrial, with your Brady request, you're asking for the name of the witness, who's going to be the police officer, if he has personal firsthand knowledge that the Constitution and code apply, just because you're physically in Washington. And this is probably going to play out, though. You'll make your objections.
I've actually asked that a couple of times now already, in clarifications. So I asked the court while it was in session, and then the judge stepped out, and the prosecutor was talking to me, and the standby counsel informed me that you can talk to them, but anything you say can and you will be used against you. So I just looked at him, I smiled, and I said, "Are you confident that your witness is qualified to make these legal conclusions?"
Oh, nice.
And that's all I said.
Oh, you didn't wait for a response? Or you didn't get a response?
Oh, he responded.
With?
He said, he's the most competent witness that we've ever had. He never answered about qualification. He just said, he's competent. I asked for qualifications, and before I could finish up with another question, the judge came back in.
I think what I would do is I would send him another Brady request and ask him one question and say, I need a yes or a no. Does your witness have personal knowledge the Constitution and code apply to me just because I'm physically in Washington? And that's it.
That brings up a really good point. In my original Brady request, so I know this is irrelevant, but just follow me here. A lot of these, there are some statements that the officer claims I made, and the original Brady request has requests for audio and video. I never received any audio and video, but I never received anything saying, hey, we're not looking, or hey, this is all the evidence, or anything like that. So I'm not even sure if, going into the proceedings, if they even have any audio video, or they are completely relying on purely the testimony of this officer.
They very well may
be. That they would have given it to me with the other discovery, which they did give me.
Hold on, we're up against a break. My name is Marc Stevens, listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. We'll be back in just a few moments, so don't go away. I'm sorry, I had to mute you up because I can't hear you over the feed.
No worries.
All right, well, sounds like you...
Yeah, you got the bumper. I don't get to hear it.
It sounds like you're doing pretty good, so... man, this... okay, I'm going to do my best to get to everybody over here, so... I got to take a little breather, but if we don't finish in the next segment, we'll have another 4 or 5 minutes that we can do off air that will be on the podcast, all right?
Yeah, totally. I'm hanging around for as long as you let me.
Okay, I'll be right back. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted. 3 hours of Anarchy Radio, a little more than halfway through here today, but we will have another hour commercial-free on Wednesday. So we got that going for us over there, so that's always good. One of the things we're going to get back to the calls. I'm not going to give the call line out anymore because, well, hell, we'd have a 5-hour show. And I can't. Got to have time to jam and play some blues, but we'll probably get a little more content after the show. But I wanted to point out that when they throw in the weasel words, Casey, when they say things that your presence within the state, I would object and say, objection, is it your position that my physical location proves your Constitution applies? And if they insist on state, I would. No, are you saying the state is the same as the physical? And it's something we've discussed before. Which is,
then we go into the geography issue.
Yeah.
Can you bring the state in here so I can face it, the wheelbarrow of dirt?
Yeah, well, or you can just say, sir, is the prosecution really representing a geographic location? Or no, it's not. So let's just please, could you stop using the loaded political words of art? Do you believe that my physical location proves your Constitution and code apply? You do. Great. Where's the prosecution's evidence to prove that? And that settles that.
Yeah, I had never been to a motions hearing before, and so I ended up speaking out of turn and was threatened with sanctions a couple of times because not knowing any better, the prosecution made several points, and I objected just immediately. I was threatened by the judge a couple of times for that. So there's a little procedure or some process that I don't know because since he entered a plea for me, we've moved past the arraignment, which is as far as they've ever gotten me. So now that I'm past the arraignment, I'm in new territory.
Well, you're in and that you can always file to strike the plea. Did you object and try to, because you were trying to plead guilty?
I did use that, and again, that's what. So we went from one motions hearing to the next motions hearing. So I have a motions hearing coming up on the 7th, and it's going to be that same kind of process where he basically kind of hinted that he's going to he'll remove the plea of not guilty to allow me to file a plea of guilty. But even when I spoke with him, when he asked me what are your plans if I strike this motion of not guilty, I said my intention is to enter a plea of guilty, again presuming the court can show its evidence, or that the prosecution can show its evidence that it has evidence of jurisdiction or that it has a qualified witness with first-hand personal knowledge. And so he accepted that. He gave me time for, I guess basically he gave the prosecution time to rebut is what he was really doing.
Nice.
And I received that the other day. So I meant to shoot them to you in the morning. I ended up getting called into work today. So I will take some scans of those this evening and send them over your way. I like this idea of using the sending in another Brady request, asking very specifically for that witness. While I got a moment, I got to plug your book. I've read both books, and Government Indicted is everything I hoped it would be. I bought 2 copies, and I'm going to buy a couple more and start handing them out. This is good stuff, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's available at markstevens.net. And it does have a whole model for having, to be able to effectively defend yourself with real-world examples and of why we're doing.
That's what I really like about it. The first one was a good informational introduction, and this one is giving me some insight into process. I've been reading it while I was on hold, and I'm at page 80. It's great stuff, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I'm actually thinking that it's probably a good thing to do, so it's coming up more often now, is to file separately. Because Brady, for those who are not familiar, Brady is a continuing obligation. It's not a one-time thing. It's a continuing obligation. And I had another prosecutor that I may do a video about recently, agree that if in the future such evidence does come across his table, he will disclose it immediately because he has to. So filing...
My cousin Vinny.
Yeah, there you go. So
he has to give it to you.
It's called disclosure, you dickhead. I love that. So I'm having people and suggesting that we file a supplemental or a follow-up where you're just asking the one single question, yes or no, does your witness have such personal knowledge of this evidence? Because then, if he says yes, then what is the evidence you're talking about?
Right. Where is it? You've given me discovery, and I don't see it in here. Where is it?
Yeah. I have to do this video because there was a prosecutor who actually responded to a motion to dismiss for prosecutorial misconduct. And that's why I never responded to the motion to dismiss. But when you accuse them of misconduct, they tend to respond. And all he could do was quote the code. He not cite any evidence at all. Trooper Saunders will testify that the defendant was physically in Ohio.
That's what their rebuttal to that. In substance, that's what this to the motion to strike and the claim, because there's a references in the motion to strike the plea that was entered. It brings up jurisdiction again. So again, the rebuttal was to some court case here in Washington that I'm not sure how that's relevant to me whatsoever. And the fact that, so to speak, the factoid that the officer saw me present in the state of Washington while I was pretty sure I was in the state of, I think it was Third Eye Blind at that point.
Nice. Wow. Well, you actually don't want to say anything like that to them, but
oh no, never. I try not to make assertions. The only assertion I ended up making, the judge got me pretty upset, and the assertion that I made was, I am challenging the jurisdiction of the officer at the time he stopped me, and at this court to continue to compel me to be here by violence. That's the only affirmative statement I've made.
Sounds like you're doing pretty damn good.
Well, the last time they tried to put me away for 2 years and a $10,000 fine as a vehicle operator non-compliance, and this is the best part, I was a passenger in a parked vehicle. So I was a vehicle operator criminally, apparently, and they never got me past arraignment, and it essentially, it all started sliding my way when I made that statement. And again, this was before I had really gotten into your stuff. I just knew the foundation, like, whoa, you guys have to have some evidence. So that, again, I brought up that, and then a couple of weeks later, the prosecution, they didn't dismiss it, but they came up with a schedule of continuance basically for a year. You don't run in with us again, and we'll leave you alone and drop it. And at that point, I was ready enough to sign. It had been 8 months.
Wow. I'd want to say to the officer, excuse me, just how high are you? And I would expect him to just say yes to that.
Right.
It's like, yeah. This is just a guy who's got a bone. He probably, I don't want to get into that, but he was having a bad day, and you were his.
To be fair to the officer, that officer was actually the most polite officer I have ever dealt with. Not only was he polite, he went out of his way. So, like, when he was informed me when he was arresting me, he was taking my stuff and everything. And there was a USB drive. I'm a programmer, so my life is in code. There was a USB drive that was sitting in the car, and I'm like, dude, that's my life. If you impound that with my car, I'm done. And so he actually went and grabbed it and made sure that it stayed with me and was given back to me. And he never did book me. I to this day have not been fingerprinted. They took my blood and they called that good. They started proceedings without even having the blood test back. The blood test took like 2 months.
Oh, well, we're almost at the end of the segment here. I think you've got a pretty good position here with the prosecution. I would move to strike the plea, and I have a motion template for that.
And that's been put in.
Okay.
That's put in, and it's supposed to be responded to on the 7th.
Oh, fantastic! Get the follow up to the prosecutor, and maybe he'll speak to you. But definitely get that follow up to him, and maybe get the set for a. Depending on what his response is, you can then file a motion to dismiss for prosecutorial misconduct and get that set for a hearing. And I got to say this. I have to say this. Wait, real quick. If you get a motion hearing, absolutely under no circumstances should I hear from anybody that when you get in there and the judge asks you, do you have anything to add, that you say, I think the motion speaks for itself. I don't care what the opinion is or how well written the motion is, and because it is. You have no business doing that. Our position should be, I want to know right now if the prosecution has evidence to overcome the motion. I want to see the evidence on the table right now to prove that just because I'm physically in Washington, the Constitution and code apply to me. Other than that, nothing he says is relevant to overcome the motion. And so
when they asked if I had anything to add at the beginning, which apparently was the only time I'm allowed to speak, the only thing I said, and I remember it from an earlier show, was the motion speaks for itself. I have nothing to add. The motion speaks for itself.
We don't do that. We don't do that, Casey. You make your objection.
Oh, then I must have picked that up somewhere else.
Yeah, you can always object and ask your question. Objection, where is the evidence? Objection, where is the evidence? If he says you can't object, now you've got an appealable error. My name is Marc Stevens. We'll be right back in just a moment. Don't go away. Yeah, we can take a couple minutes here off air. This sounds like it's probably it's going pretty well. And if the prosecutor and judge want to force at the trial, you can really embarrass with the prosecutor's own statements, where he's insisting that his witness is competent. But once you get him on cross-examination, the second question, he'll be declaring him incompetent. They do it every time.
Yeah, well, as soon as I get into any legal claims, did you see me in Washington State? Did you see me driving? Did you see any of those? They're going to have to object.
Well, the first two questions you should be asking him on cross-examination, and this is after you've already objected him being on the stand and you've made your objections during the direct. The first question is, did you make a determination that just because you saw me physically in Washington that your constitutional laws applied and that you had jurisdiction to investigate? Yes. Do you have any proof whatsoever that just because I'm physically in Washington, your laws apply to me? Bam! Prosecutor is out of his chair. Out of his chair. In fact, you're probably not even going to understand exactly what the prosecutor says because the judge is going to also say something at the same time. Now you've gone.
Yeah, I've already had that happen. Where both
geez.
the judge and the prosecutor objected to something.
You know, I have a feeling that this is, either way this goes, you and I need to schedule for you to be the first caller to the show so that we can have plenty of time to discuss what's going on with your situation.
Oh, well, I'm going to be bugging you Wednesday, and I'm going to be bugging you next Saturday. Like I said, tonight I'll scan in the paperwork that they sent me thus far, and I'll kick it over your way in email, and we can go from there. I don't have a lot to spend right now, so I'm just buying copies of your digital ebook, as many as I can.
Well, you know, the follow-up motions I comp, so you don't have to, you know, so.
Oh, understood. Yeah, and I bought the full motion packs, and I've got the scripts and everything, and like I said, they've served me well thus far. I'll like I said, I'll send you the stuff that they sent me, and then I'll ideally get that Brady request, and I'll get up there Monday, if they're even open Monday. I can't remember if they're open Mondays. I'll get up there and file that first thing because I guess I'm supposed to give the prosecutor 21 days to respond.
Okay.
So that I know that the next motion hearing is under that 21-day limit. So if I hit him with the other Brady request, I guess since it's just a continuance, it doesn't really matter.
And the Brady request is a continuing obligation, and you're only asking him for something he was supposed to have when he filed the complaint in the first place. So,
yeah,
it's not, you know, because what we had with Ginger, where he only asked the same thing you did. He was only asking for evidence they were supposed to have already, and they wanted 30 days to give it, and then turn around and withdrew, which is always nice. So, all right, well, look.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, stay in touch. Definitely give me a call on the Wednesday broadcast. Now, try to be the first caller.
Yeah, I've got your number programmed now. I'll hit you up early. Thanks again, and have a great show, man. I'll keep listening.
No problem. Appreciate the call. We have Casey in Spokane. We'll hear more from Casey on the Wednesday live commercial-free broadcast of the No State Project. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted, third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the LRN Network, LRN Liberty Radio Network. Before I run out of time, I do want to play this, and it is something that I'm going to address. And I don't know if this is going to stop anything, and maybe I'm going to have to contact them directly. I'd like to think that if I point out that a gross error is being made, that the host of Free Talk Live will stop misinterpreting or mischaracterizing the work that I do. And that I take great pride in because we've been able to help people on 3 continents, successful, and get tickets thrown out and whatnot. And maybe this was said in the heat of the moment. I don't know. But Free Talk Live has a very large audience, and people are already stressed out when they get tickets or attacked by the IRS, and I really don't think that they need such fear-mongering or such false statements being said about the work that I do. I go through a lot of trouble to make sure that what I do is not only easily accessible, but I'm easily accessible, so if there's questions or concerns that people can contact me, people do. But Free Talk Live has a tremendous audience compared to mine, and this could be scaring people away. So I'm going to play the clip. This is, I think, from last week, and I think it's Darryl Perry that is saying it. If this is not Darryl Perry, I apologize, but it's definitely from Free Talk Live.
And I honestly, I don't know. I think sometimes it only, quote unquote, works because the judge just doesn't want to deal with you and doesn't want to, file a bunch of paperwork. So therefore just toss it out. Right, but that doesn't mean that it's a guaranteed thing of use this in any court. It's a guaranteed system.
Yeah. And well, first of all, I want to point out right here, I have absolutely never said it was a guaranteed system. So to be talking about a guaranteed system in the context of MarkStevens.net and this radio show, the No State Project, is dead wrong. I have never said that. The only thing that's guaranteed if you go through that is you're going to prove that they're criminals. Not that a ticket is going to get thrown out. For goodness sakes, how many times have I used the phrase damage control on this radio show? There is absolutely no excuse to make it out like I'm guaranteeing success. That's just dead wrong. Absolutely wrong. So please, if you're going to discuss me, I am not making a guarantee of success. We're dealing with criminals. Okay, we'll continue.
Stevens, even he advises his client, this is going to go one of two ways. Either it gets tossed out or you get arrested for contempt. Do you still want to proceed? So, even the guy that advocates this knows that it's, not always going to work.
Well, I agree that it's not always going to work out. I have absolutely never said that there are one of two ways it's going to work out. It's either going to get kicked out or you're going to go to jail for contempt. That's ridiculous. There's a threat of contempt that's looming over everybody that walks into that court. You could just be there with a hat on, as Pete Eyre found out. He just didn't take his hat off. So the threat of contempt is there constantly. Not because you're doing something that I'm advocating. And get it right. Yes, it can go one of two ways. The judge can toss it out or the judge doesn't. It doesn't mean that you're going to be threatened with contempt every time. And it certainly doesn't mean that you're going to be held in contempt. So I don't appreciate that someone on a nationally syndicated radio show is saying that if you do things like with Marc Stevens himself actually says this is going to go one of two ways. It's going to get kicked out or you're going to go to jail for contempt. I mean, come on. Give me a break. That is just so sloppy. And get it right. I've never said that. So please stop accusing me of that. Yeah, I got accused on Free Talk Live of saying if you work with me, it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to get kicked out or the judge is going to put you in jail for contempt. So I had to address that because it's just so damn wrong. But I'll do a video and a separate response for that. So hopefully someone is listening and say, oh, we need to set things straight and we actually have to correct the record and maybe do it on a live broadcast because that would be appreciated. It's not the way I do things. But we can discuss that more another time. Moving on to your calls, we have area code 304. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mark, this is Gadsden Viper.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Gadsden Viper. You knew me off of Skype. I mean, maybe.
Okay, Viper, and where are you calling from?
West Virginia.
West Virginia, all right. What do you got for us today?
Well, I don't know if you received it. I sketched it to you yesterday, PDF of the dismissal order. This is a fairly long story because it's been going on since 2015. But my wife was stopped for speeding and then cited for speeding and no driver's license, even though she was the one speeding, the truck in front of her was. Things drew out. I have health complications, and so it went into 2016. We went to magistrate court, lost there. Did not use your stuff, your different motions. Filed when we got into circuit court. We filed because it automatically goes from magistrate court to circuit court for a new trial, de novo, and filed your motions. And when she got into that court, they railroaded her through and still denied all the motions and so forth. 6 months has gone by. We never paid the fines. We never received a final order from the judge. And we got a notice yesterday that they dismissed the case due to the motions we filed.
And you emailed this to me?
I sent it. Yeah, I Skyped it to you yesterday.
Oh, you Skyped it?
Yeah, well, you can Skype a PDF file.
Yeah, sure. I'm just okay. The thing is, sometimes there's a lot of fake birthdays on Skype, and so I get buried with these notifications, and so I must have missed it. Are you able to tell me your username?
Yeah, it's Gadsden Viper.
Oh.
GADSEN Viper. It's VIPER.
Yeah. Okay. Let me check it out. I would have noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll read it to you. It's awesome. I mean, what they sent in this. I mean, it's got the county, of course, in West Virginia. And this was funny too, because we asked them if it was a civil action or criminal action. Not that it matters. They said criminal action, but on the notice it says civil action, and it gives the case number. Then it said State of West Virginia plaintiff, and then versus, and my wife's name, and it says alleged defendant, which is what we use the entire time. We always claim to be alleged. It said, this matter having come before the court of defendant's motion to dismiss, the court being fully advised of the premises and good cause appearing, it is hereby ordered granting the defendant's motion to dismiss with prejudice.
Wow.
And signed by the judge.
So this is another recent one. I checked, and I don't have – the last thing I got from you was – and the last contact I have that's posted here, it was in May.
Okay, well, I can email it to you. It's not a big deal.
That is fantastic. So the motion was granted with prejudice. And for those who aren't aware, with prejudice means it's not coming back. The prosecution has failed so utterly, it's not coming back. So I want to just point out, and man, Viper, I appreciate that in calling and letting me know, because it's a complete surprise to me. I'm like, somebody, I would have remembered that. But if there was evidence to prove personam, territorial, and subject matter jurisdiction, and the same evidence to prove an essential element of these alleged crimes, if there was evidence, why would the judge dismiss it with prejudice instead of doing it without prejudice so the prosecution could just bring the evidence that was lacking? Because there's no evidence.
The funny thing is, the trial happened over 6 months ago. She actually lost it. The judge found her guilty and said, "Oh, you got to pay all the fines and so forth." And we just said, "Well, okay, no problem. As soon as you file, we didn't tell the judge this, but we figured as soon as he files the order, then we'll do whatever." And we're going to actually. She told the judge in court that if they did find her guilty, she was going to appeal this to state Supreme Court.
Sure. Well,
wow. And it wasn't that big of a case. It was not like it was going to be a 3-inch binder or something we were doing for each one of the judges. So we haven't heard from them in 6 months. Never got a final order, and then we get this notice that they've dismissed.
Yeah, that's what you had sent me in May. It says it's been almost 30 days, and the circuit court judge still hasn't filed his final ruling into the docket. And until he does, we can't file the appeal. Uh-huh.
So I don't know why they all of a sudden. I mean, I think they realized that we weren't playing games, and maybe decided that he didn't. The judge in this case didn't want to be the one that he known for the guy that ruined the gravy train with biscuit wheels that they were riding. Because once it went to the state Supreme Court, I mean, we had everything in the file. The prosecutor had nothing, no evidence of any kind in the file.
Well, he couldn't.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But, I mean, he didn't answer any of our motions. The judge did everything.
Well, yes, that's the way it usually goes. When the judge is willing to cover for the prosecution keeps their mouth shut. And,
and that's exactly what happened. I mean, the judge said more than the prosecutor ever said in court.
Oh, yeah.
And then when she got in there and when the trial was going on, she started questioning the cop. Of course, the first thing that happened was that they jumped up and said, "Oh, he's not qualified to make legal determinations," and stopped her from asking any more questions.
There you go, denial of effective cross too.
Yeah, so they knew we had them by the shorty shorts. I think so anyway, and I think they were just figuring, well, we found them guilty in the courtroom, even though we didn't file the final order. They'll just pay the fines, and but we didn't do that. I mean, I'm one of those people, and she's one of those people who say, we're going to wait until they make us do something before we do something.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad that it turned out that way. That's fantastic. I can't wait to redact your personal info and get that posted.
Well, the only thing I've got on, I did cross her name off of it, but everything else is on there. I mean, the case file, all that stuff's on the judge's name.
So I don't have to redact anything? I can post it as you give it to me?
Well, I mean, unless you think that other stuff, the only thing I took off of was her name.
Okay, well, I'll take the name, address. There may be, well, it's not a ticket, so it's not going to have
No, it's not. No, that's the only thing on her of hers that's on there. It's personal. I mean, you'd have to come here to look up the case number.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to seeing this. You know, it's so critics that will turn around and say, even though he's explicitly granting the motion, they'll still put out, well, it had nothing to do with the motion. Doesn't mean he agreed with it. And it
says right in it, it's because of the motion.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean.
It says that, and it also has it's kind of light on it because of I copied it into the computer. It has the filing of the clerk of the court also, the date it was filed into the record.
Oh, you know, it's just a matter of to demonstrate just the mental gymnastics and the denial that critics will go through to deny that there's any validity to the work that I do. They'll say anything, and that's what sucks about having someone on Free Talk Live, you know, make false statements about me, because more people are going to hear that than are going to hear me. And they're just going to hear, oh, I heard the guys on Free Talk Live, and I know Ian loves Marc. He's, you know, so if they're saying Marc's thing is dangerous, then I'm not going to do it. Congratulations. That is great.
Yeah, but this just shows that the courts are playing games. I mean, this was over 6 months ago that they found her guilty. They never filed the order. They just. I wonder how many people have actually had this happen to them, where the judge never filed anything in the record. They never filed the final order they had to pay, and they just said, he said, you're guilty, and they went in and they paid the fine.
Well, it could have been because not everyone tells them, I'm going to appeal. You know, I like the great loophole from the Addams family, and I caution this court, I shall appeal regardless of the rulings. And you know, so maybe that had to do with it. Maybe they figured, oh, we're back here live on the No State Project. We're talking with Gadsden Viper of West Virginia, who had a great success story that he surprised me with because I did not get the documents that he had sent, which is, I think, actually better. I like being surprised on the big show about that. So I you know, maybe we'll get the video for that up on Monday. So look forward to that. We were just talking off air about how critics will still turn around and say stupid things that even though Gadsden Viper has an explicit order from the judge granting the motion, critics will still come out and say, it doesn't mean he agreed with it. Because that's what happens every day, everybody. Judges routinely grant motions they don't agree with. Sounds like sound logic to me, right? What do you think?
Yeah, but it says right in the motion that he dismissed dismissed based on the motion.
Yeah. I know.
So he had to agree with the motion, otherwise he wouldn't have dismissed the case.
And he dismissed it with prejudice. So, but there are a handful of people, and that's the thing. When I get criticism on my work, it's either an insult to me or, like what they did on Free Talk Live, they'll just completely mischaracterize, and I'm not saying it's everybody. It sounds like it was just Darryl Perry. They'll just mischaracterize what I've said. So that should tell you something. When it comes to this show and the work that I have done, the evidence speaks for itself, and and that's why there's no valid criticism that's ever been leveled at me about the work that I do. They have to mischaracterize it. Silly things like, well, it works in other places, but it doesn't ever work in New Hampshire, which is not true. So you can come up with all these stupid excuses, even when the judge here dismisses with prejudice. Yeah, but the honest people are going to see that, well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, the judge did that. It doesn't matter what someone said on the radio. It doesn't matter what some YouTube commenter said. The evidence speaks for itself. What sucks is when the mischaracterizations are getting the majority of the audience. That's what's damaging, because people are going to hear that. They're not going to hear me. They're not going to hear your call and say, wow, somebody called in unsolicited and has a document proving the motion was granted. All they're going to hear is... I'm sorry?
And the order has the word hereby ordered granting defendants... The word ordered is like 3 times bigger than the rest of it in dark print.
Well, that's common. When they do an order, it's always in bold and all caps. Ordered, adjudged.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, how can you deny that?
You can't logically deny it. All you're doing is your bias against me is so great that you'll ignore the the direct evidence right in front of your face. And
Well,
that's
as far as
fine.
I'm concerned, I mean, this is a feather in your cap. The motion to dismiss, we didn't modify it. I mean, as far as that goes, other than to put in the necessary things because of where we're at.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things that applied to our region.
Sure.
But as far as that goes, it was your motion.
Yeah.
And I think it was awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I never said to you guys, this is going to go one of two ways. The judge is going to grant the motion or you're going to go to jail for contempt.
Well, no, because, I mean, it's been 6 months since and the judge said, oh, you're guilty in the trial, and then 6 months later, he sends a final order saying, oh, we grant your motion to dismiss.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And with prejudice, everybody. And this is it's not the first and it's not the last. And just because someone hasn't called and said that this happened, that they got it in New Hampshire, doesn't mean it doesn't work, in quotes, in New Hampshire. It's just very few. It has worked in New Hampshire. I don't have the documentation to prove it. And I even have on my show notes, I wanted to put the out, and maybe we can do a crowdfund for this. If somebody in New Hampshire wants to test this, get a parking ticket, video it, and I will provide everything gratis. And so if there are filing fees or something like that, we can maybe do a crowdfunding thing, or maybe someone can do a donation. So someone in New Hampshire who wants to actually follow the Socratic method and go in with video and record these proceedings to see what happens in New Hampshire to prove once and for all that full of crap that it doesn't work in New Hampshire, I am more than willing to step to the plate and help somebody to do that. I will make calls to a prosecutor, which I've done before. Okay? It doesn't matter the geographic location. Now, that's not a guarantee, Darryl, that everyone is going to be successful. But we've done this on 3 continents, and people have been successful. And here we've got West Virginia. So everyone who wants to say, oh, it'll work in Texas, but it's not going to work in West Virginia. No, it does work. The Socratic method and holding the prosecution to the burden of proof works. What they want to say is Marc Stevens' way of holding the prosecution to their burden of proof doesn't work. And that's just not true. Because you have proof in your hands.
I would also add, too, Mark, that anybody out there who is having issue needs to get on Skype and get in a role play, because the role play really makes a big difference. It really does. And if your information is great and it works that way too, but if you go in there not prepared, it's really going to hurt you. So get into a role play, and it's going to make a difference.
Yes, I agree that you definitely, and we say this on every show, you definitely have to do the role playing. Get in front of a city council meeting and ask them, even if they don't answer your questions, it's fine, because it's the experience of going in and asking. That is what you need, and you need to do the role playing. So, yes, they may actually. This is a great example. This is such a great call. This is a great example, not just because the motion was granted. It was granted after a conviction and someone was railroaded. That I got to give you a slow clap on that. I have to do a slow clap. I think that was great. After conviction, everybody. So even if you've been convicted, you can still get it tossed out with prejudice, and we've been successful on other appeals. Here, thank goodness you didn't actually have to do the appeal, but we have been successful on appeals. So I can't wait to post this. And I'm going to do it where I embed the YouTube video, like I said earlier, Gadsden. I'm going to embed the video into a link on a page on the forum, so I can disable the comments. So if people want to make stupid comments, they're going to have to come onto my forum and do it.
That's great. Yeah, that's what should happen, because, I mean, they haven't been here, they haven't walked in our shoes and seen what's going on, and they're just out there naysaying to try to detract, and I don't see how we can go forward doing that.
Yeah, well, I welcome the criticism and I welcome the dissent. We do a live broadcast, and the thing is, you please get your facts right before you dissent. Don't let bias or something like that get into it. You know, when I say things like blanket statements, cops and government agents are criminals, it's because I have the evidence to back it up. And I say, well, because Mark, where's your proof? Because they force us to pay them. Now, if you have an issue with that evidence, that doesn't make them a criminal, that's fine. We can have an honest discussion about that. You're going to have to produce some contrary evidence and a logical argument to show that forcing people to pay you doesn't make you a criminal. So, especially a stranger. So, hey, Gatson, we're out of time here. I got to bring Joey up. This is going to be fun. I do appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
We'll be back with Joey. I think he's in Texas in just a few moments, but we'll get the video up with Gadsden Vipers win on Monday. So don't go away. Hey, thanks again, my friend. That was great.
No, you're welcome. Hey, I'll get this emailed over to you. I'll just put it on your regular email address.
Yeah, that's cool. MarkStevens@mail.com.
Right, I'll just send it to that. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted, and look for on Monday. I guess another video is going to be pushed. I've got to get the video with Gadsden Vipers dismissal with prejudice posted on markstevens.net. We'll get that, of course, on YouTube. So check that out. What I'll probably do is get the audio from the call and link that and put that in the video also so people can hear from the man himself. That's especially, I mean, the timing was really great, especially since, you know, the way I do things has been mischaracterized on a nationally syndicated radio show. So hopefully Darryl is going to set the record straight. Somebody can let them know, and maybe I'll contact Ian about it. Hopefully the record is set straight that that's not what I do, and that he was wrong. He was wrong. And you know, another thing too, bring Joey up here in a second. You know, it is really something that no matter how many times I have people call this broadcast and have motions dismissed with prejudice and have drug charges thrown out, or IRS stuff thrown out on 3 damn continents, people still can't admit that there is merit to what I do. They still have to piss on it by saying it's just the judge was too bothered and didn't want to see. The motion is 3 pages long. Get over it. There's merit to it. If you think what I'm doing here on the No State Project, if you think it has no merit, then attack the actual argument. Leave the excuses for the quant-loose guys. Oh, the judge just, is just too much trouble. If it really was just too much trouble, you would see the Freeman sovereign citizen types who flood them with paperwork. You'd see them getting dismissals every day. But it's not. It's not. Just, anyway, Joey, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Save the best for last.
Yeah, well, it didn't work out that way. I mean, I had to bring Gadsden Viper on, of course. But I know we're going to run out of time, so I am going to apologize in advance to everybody that we do have a live broadcast on Wednesday. It's commercial-free. So before we get into the military thing, we've got to cover a couple minutes with veganism.
That's fine.
What is your particular disagreement with the vegan ethic that it is immoral to cause unnecessary harm, suffering, and death of animals?
Well, I agree that it's immoral to cause unnecessary suffering, but my position is that I don't put animals on an equal level with humans. So therefore, I believe animals were put here for humans, people, to use. So that's where I come from.
Okay, but does that conflict with your ethic belief that you agree with that unnecessary suffering and death is wrong?
Well, I would consider like unnecessary suffering to be like killing an animal for absolutely no reason.
Well, what if the killing? Okay, do you believe? Well, let's go through the same thing we did with Chris quickly. Do you believe that if you can meet all your nutritional needs with just plants alone, then it would be unnecessary to kill and eat animals?
Okay, so just to understand it, so if I could get all my nutritional needs from plants and not use animals at all, That's your question. Is it
if you get all
ethical?
your nutritional needs through plants alone,
Mm-hmm.
would it be unnecessary then to kill and eat animals?
Yes, it would
Okay.
be unnecessary.
It would be unnecessary. So, all right, so since it's unnecessary, do you believe that the science is sound, that the data is sound, that you can meet all your nutritional needs with just eating plants?
No, I don't always think that's going to be the case, that there will
Okay.
always be plants available to eat, and that sometimes we would have to hunt or kill animals to
Okay,
survive.
but that's a different question. Okay, because now we're going back to the necessity. There may not be anything. So,
Right.
it is proven many times over that we can meet all of our nutritional. We're in the Western world. I mean, you're not living in, you're not living in the bush. Okay, so
No.
Speaking just for Joey doesn't share food. I couldn't help it.
Right.
When it comes to Joey's food, it's not necessary for you can get all your nutrition met without killing and eating animals.
Right.
Okay. So would
can.
you agree that if you did unnecessarily kill and eat an animal, that would be wrong?
No.
Okay.
I don't agree that's wrong because, like I said, I don't believe that it's not wrong to kill animals if you're going to eat them and utilize them.
But you just contradicted, because you did state it would be wrong because if it's unnecessary, since you can meet all your nutritional needs through plants, it would be unnecessary to kill and eat animals. But then, okay, so I want to get into the subject because it's usually the same sticking point we got with Chris.
Okay.
Okay, but I think we've identified an inconsistency in your ideas, but we'll move on to the pressing issue that you guys have had on the chat, where everyone thinks you're going to get burned, and I don't understand why they say that, because I've never had a crossword with you, on or off air, and
No.
we've discussed this before. So if somebody wants to hear someone get burned hardcore on the show, yeah, get Wes Serra to call in.
Well, I agree that, we've never been in like heated arguments with each other. It's always civil discussions, and I think they're just looking for that to happen, and I just don't see it happening. So
That's because even though you and I can
topic-
disagree on certain things, we still
Right.
respect each other and have a civil discourse, which is what we want to have here on the show, which is why there's no evidence that anyone can point to that if you disagree with me that I will terminate the call prematurely, I'll talk over you and mute you. And if you're talking incessantly like we had a couple of weeks ago, yeah, I had to mute him, but I always brought him back once I was able to finish my point, but I have to be allowed to talk. So the idea here that that you guys are, I'm going to say bickering back and forth with is, and I'm looking at Tom, by the way, is that your belief is that as a transition to a voluntary society, and even in a voluntary society, that the service we commonly call military is still going to be necessary.
That's correct. I believe that there will always be a need for a military, that a military will always be necessary. And many people instantly assume, I would say, that means I believe that a government-controlled military is necessary, and that's not the case. So I think the question I'm asking you is, do you believe the same way or differently that a military is necessary or not necessary?
I believe that a service that, like Blackwater, for example, where people are not forced to pay, like any other service, I think any service that's providing protection, whether you call it military or police, is a service that people want. So, is it necessary? I think in not all cases. No, I don't think it's necessary in all cases. I think it is a service that the market demands and that the market will fill, and can do so without violating people's life, liberty, and property in order to do so. I believe it can be provided on a voluntary basis. So, and I don't think you disagree with that.
No, and that's where I come from generally. I believe that the military is necessary, and the case gets brought up, well, you're talking about a militia or you're talking about this. I'm just talking about what a military does. They offer a protection service. Now, certain aspects of the military are more violent than others. Specifically, like what I do, in the transportation, because I am in the Army and everybody knows it. I work with boats. I drive boats. Currently, work in a harbor master detachment, which controls a boat harbor. So, yeah, I mean, that can be completely separate from the military if it has to be. So it's just all about, like you said, people are willing to pay for these services. And I agree that there will always be a need for it. There will always be people willing to do harm to others. It's a problem that I don't think is ever going to go away. So just because when I say military is necessary, that automatically makes me a statist to several of the folks in the chats.
Yeah, we did speak briefly on another show a while back, and I just, for the life of me, could not see where the disagreement was and why. It's like they're getting hung up on the word.
Yes, and I see that happening a lot within the chats, is that people get hung up on certain words, and it detracts from solving problems, which is what I like to do, is find the problem and find different solutions to the problem, and then it allows that person we're trying to help to go with what they feel is the best solution. So people often get hung up in these words and these definitions and what we call certain things. Call it taxes. Yeah, we all understand that taxes are theft. They're taken by force. So it is theft. People are forced to pay them.
Yeah, how many times have I mentioned on a show when other prominent liberty activists and libertarian speakers still mention police when we talk about a voluntary society, but where it's understood that there's a huge difference. And it seems to me the guys in the chat are missing that. You can say police protection without meaning a militarized pay or go to jail type of people like we have now. So I guess maybe just to stop it is to and give them cause to keep plugging away at that and bickering about it. Just say private protection agency. What are they going to say? What kind of criticism are they going to level at that? I wouldn't imagine Tom or anyone else would disagree with that, as long as it's not the being paid is not forcible, and the people using that agency are not using it to violate people's life, liberty, and property. I mean, because obviously that's one of the issues of high concentrations of wealth in just a few hands, is because they can now pay people to tax people. But other than that, I don't see the objection of a private security agency, private police force.
And it does go into a lot of times the things people say is because I'm in the military. I'm in the Army, so I'm immediately associated with what I would say the people that actually are doing the initiation of force. They're holding the gun to people's heads. They're going to their houses and locking them up. I don't do that. If I were ever told to do something like that, I wouldn't. I would quit. I'm constantly being told, well, quit your job now and go do something else.
No.
Well, because I believe that a military is necessary, that's where my conflict comes in.
But is it necessary for you to be involved with this particular one? Where, and I've told you before, taxation is theft, so that's part of a criminal organization. Now, this is an ethical dilemma that a lot of people, have in your situation, or if they're police or they work for the IRS. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project, talking with Joey, and it is Texas, right?
Virginia.
Do I always mistake it as Texas?
No. I've bounced around a little, but never been in Texas.
Okay. Well, I think I just keep screwing that up. Welcome back, everybody. We're in the last segment, and I am really sorry. I know we've got some callers, but I am not going to have time after the show to be able to take any callers. I do appreciate the patience. What I can throw out is call the live broadcast on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, I will probably be able to go more than an hour. And plus, we don't have the commercial breaks. But all the off-air commentary, of course, from today will be on the broadcast, thanks to Calvin. And so we'll have more time on Wednesday for the broadcast. So definitely, please, I apologize for that. We'll get to everybody on Wednesday. So please call back in then. So what we were talking about off air is that the guys are pointing out to you that the way you make your money is through a criminal organization. The taxation is theft, and so the ethical dilemma for you is I got to take care of my family and I got secure. What do you do? And you're not the first, and you certainly won't be the last one. I hope there's a whole lot of people like you in that situation where they, at least when they realize that there's an ethical issue here. It's the same with veganism. I mean, you can say that animals are lower, but that doesn't excuse your own ethical principle that unnecessary harm and death is wrong. And so when we come to the point where it's not necessary for you, for your health, for your nutrition, because the question is, name one particular nutrient that you can only get from animals, one, to try to justify killing and eating that animal. And nobody can point. It's just the fact is there is no nutrition, no nutrient that is only available in animals that you need to live. You don't need cholesterol. You don't need to eat cholesterol because that's one of the few. That's something you can get from animals. You can't get from eating plants, which is why vegans have the lowest risk for heart disease and whatnot. So the same thing happens here. You have to. It's an ethical dilemma for you. What do? Do you continue doing that, or do you look for something else that you can do that's more in line with your ethical principles?
Well, my response to that has been a lot lately. Is many people are paid or get their money from government, whether or not you work for them. So just because you work for an organization like me for the military doesn't necessarily mean that I guess the best word is I'm the one initiating force. There are many other people who are getting their income from the government that don't work for the government.
Sure.
So, and I believe that people just, not people, some people beat up more on the people that work for government when I think the actual problem is in identifying and trying to get rid of the people who are willing to initiate that force on others to make them pay for these services.
Well, it's a matter of, it may be just a matter of degree. Who is more immoral? Is it the CEO of McDonnell Douglas that is providing drones for the military to then use to kill innocent men, women, and children? Who's more, let's say, so is the CEO of McDonnell Douglas more morally culpable than Obama for those actions, for those deaths? It's a shared responsibility. The blood is on both of their hands. One is enabling something. So you mentioned not everyone who gets money from the federal government works for them. Well, sure. McDonnell Douglas, they just have contracts with them.
Right.
You have
all
planetariums.
The people that build the drones and all the people that make the uniforms and all the people that accept money in any sort of way from the government are allowing it to continue. And I'm saying, well, the main focus should start with the people that are willing to initiate that force and harm others. That's the main problem.
Okay,
if we started getting rid of those people,
let's look at it from another side. Who is a more immediate threat to and more dangerous? The mafia don who's calling for your head on a platter, or the individual who's willing to do it for money.
Well, yeah, the individual that's willing to pull the trigger and do harm to somebody else, initiate force to somebody else, I would say is more dangerous than the head of the organization.
See, this is a question that, it's like one of these ethical dilemmas. Which is worse? It may actually be that they're worse. It doesn't mean that the one who actually is willing to pay someone to kill you is really any less evil. You're talking about someone who is willing to pay to get that done. The only difference may be that the one who's willing to pay someone to do it is just a coward. He's not willing to do it himself. So is it
right?
So which one is more evil, or which one is worse? I would say I would start with, if there's a difference, it's minimal. It's still a common threat to somebody. Hey, I did my time in the military too. I joined for probably different reasons. I wanted to get the hell off Long Island, and it was a way to pay for school. But it didn't work out for me. But if someone had come up, at least I think I have a good track record where if I am in a situation where it comes to my realization, which happened to me live on the show last year, that what I'm doing violates my ethical principle, to the best of my ability, I change that. Now, some people may be in a situation where, like it may not be something you can change right now. We get that. But if you can, and I think this is maybe where I'm going to give the guys a benefit of the doubt here. I shouldn't. They don't deserve it, but I'm going to. I'm looking at Tom again, but you may have to get things in order. You may have a contract. I don't know. It may not be something you can walk away from right now, but it may be something you're working towards. I can't say and won't say that the way you earn money is moral and ethical, because I don't think even you believe that.
No, I do believe that it's moral and ethical, because I believe in the non-aggression principle, which is not to initiate force. If I'm not initiating force onto somebody else, if I'm not the one holding a gun specifically, then what I am doing is ethical.
Yeah, but the
because
guy who
I'm
pays
ordered to do something like that is unethical, then I have the right to refuse that, which I would.
Okay, so is the IRS agent who's not pulling the gun on you and is not initiating any direct violence on you, are they ethical, moral actors in that position as an IRS employee?
As far as the ones that an IRS employee that issues a threat, is that what you're talking about? Like they mail out the letters, or? Well,
the computer's mailing the letter, but I'm talking about the agent who has no contact with you at all, is not initiating any direct violence against you. Is an IRS agent a moral actor in that position?
Of initiating force onto somebody else?
Are they a moral actor? And it's the same as, what I'm getting at, and this is something I had discussion with.
What I'm saying is I don't know, because I haven't thought of that. I mean, as far as if they are knowingly doing something without evidence, then yes.
Well, I had this discussion with my wife just this morning. Mm-hmm. If you have a criminal organization, and we can agree that they're a criminal organization because they force perfect strangers to give them money. It's pay or go to jail or we'll kill you. That's criminal. So the organization itself is a criminal organization or syndicate.
Okay.
Now, if there's an accountant in that business and they work for a criminal organization, is the accountant a moral actor? Are they in a moral position working for a criminal organization?
Yes, they're in a moral position.
So you can work for a criminal organization and be moral?
Yes.
You're going to have to explain how that works.
Well, just because you're working for an organization that commits crimes doesn't mean you are specifically committing those crimes.
But you're participating in the organization's crime. I mean, you may not be pulling the trigger, but aren't you still part of a criminal organization? We're out of time, so you're off the hook.
Right.
You're off the hook this time. You'll have to explain that next time. My name is Marc Stevens. Listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, where it's no guarantee if you use my